What Auburn does at quarterback is going to dominate the conversation over the next 2 to 3 weeks. But I think Auburn's in a pretty good spot.
In the world full of podcasts, he's the undisputed heavyweight champion of hot takes, an Auburn sports homer, master of the boog, and message board legend. Get your buttons buttoned and your hats flattened because the Top Button Podcast is about to kick off. And you don't want to miss your courtside seat. Now, here's your host, Charlie Five.
Yes, sir. We're back. It's another episode of the Top Button Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Rush, a.k.a. Charlie Five, and we are ready to get after it. Today, we're going to talk about the most important position on the field, and that's quarterbacks. At quarterback, Auburn, the conversation between now and January 2nd is going to be all about what Auburn does at quarterback. And Auburn is in a really good spot, and I think for two real big reasons. One of them is Deuce Knight, and the other one is money and opportunity. And we're going to talk about all those. And, hey, could it lead to a completely brand new quarterback room again for the second straight year? We're going to jump into all that right now. Look, the one of the biggest reasons Auburn is in a good spot is because you have a kid like Deuce Knight on your roster. 5-star talent, a 5-star kid. It seems like he's a 5-star personality as well, where kids want to play with him, and he just seems to have that aura about him that people gravitate to him. It's very rare that you get a kid like that on your campus for 1 year, much less have him out of high school and the ability to watch him grow and mature as a quarterback and just as a young man. Look, there's no denying the potential. There is a ton of potential there. We've seen it. We've seen the flashes of it. We saw what he can do a little bit in the Mercer game, even from which I know was heavy on the legs, but even the passing ability, going 15 of 20, and showing that he has a lot of arm talent other than just throwing the ball deep. He can kind of do it. He can kind of do it all. The question is not really so much, is he a guy you could move forward with? The question is not so much, do you want to keep him? The question is not so much, is there enough there that you could build from in the future and win championships with a kid like Deuce Knight? It's not so much the answer to those questions. It's the answer to all those questions, and can it happen next year? Because the goal of this whole ordeal, the goal from John Cohen, and it seems like the goal of Alex Golesh, is to compete next year. I want to win games now. We're not going to play this getting close game. We're not going to play this long game, 3-year rebuild. We want to win right now. So the conversations that I'm sure are going to be had with Deuce and should you or should you not go to the transfer portal is, can you take what you have with Deuce and win right now? I don't 100% know the answer to that because it's really impossible to project from year to year. Now, one of the things that people scream about, and I understand, is that we got to get a high school quarterback and develop a high school quarterback. You can't continue to churn through the portal and rely on the portal because, hey, look, we hadn't had very much luck there. And I get it. But the reason those high school guys typically are ideal and work is because you bring them in under one coach, you develop them under one coach, you develop them under one system, and then when it's their turn, sometimes they're a little bit further along than if you were to bring in a portal guy and have to learn it all at once. And I totally understand the benefit. The problem when you look at Deuce is we had the coaching change. So we're starting over with Deuce just like we're starting over with anyone. So in reality, Deuce, there's not a lot of differences between the situation of rolling with a guy like Deuce and rolling with a different portal quarterback. The only benefit you have is pre-built chemistry, I guess, with receivers that may stay, like Cam Coleman and Malcolm Simmons, some of the younger guys, that he's thrown with. If you keep a guy like Duke Smith, that's really the only benefit. I mean, there's some relationship stuff too, but from just a football aspect, Deuce is almost like adding a portal quarterback as well, just because it's a whole brand new coaching staff from top to bottom. We're talking about, especially on the offensive side, there ain't nobody. There ain't nobody from the last staff that's on this staff from the offensive perspective, on the field, off the field, analysts, nobody. There's no carryover whatsoever. So it is almost like Deuce is now a portal quarterback that you're bringing in. We just have a relationship with him. We just have like emotions tied into it because we brought him in high school. So the good news is he's here for now. And to me, that puts you in such a good spot because it's a whole lot easier to keep a guy, I feel like, than go get a new guy. The question is just going to be, do you roll with him? And I don't know the answer to that. I can understand the arguments on all sides of the board. And if you don't keep him, if you don't roll with him as a starter, can you keep him? Can you find a 1-year bridge, so to speak? Can you find a 1-year bridge so that you can sort of spend a year of undoing bad habits and reinforcing and putting together a plan to have him absorb this new offensive system and be ready to move forward in 2027? To me, that may end up being the bigger question than any of it. How do you make that happen? I'm just going to be honest. I don't know. I can understand the arguments both ways, but from my side of it, it seems like a huge risk rolling it out there with Deuce next year as your primary guy. That seems like a big risk to me. If I'm a new coach coming up from G5, I want to shake off some of the G5 Billy, cobwebs and try to be more of a Kurt Signetti than a Billy Napier or whatever. I got to make some noise quick. Auburn's in sort of a death spiral. I got to right that ship, and I got to win right now. Is that the best option? Could be. I'm not sure 100% that it is. So now you got to, if that's not the case, and you're going to move in a portal quarterback direction, there's no doubt in my mind that they still want Deuce a part of that equation. They still want Deuce a part of this future. So that becomes challenge. That becomes the top challenge. If you don't roll with him, how do you keep him? This is no knock on Deuce whatsoever, but the questions that I'm raising right now about guys rolling with a starter into their first season, you can look across the SEC, you can look across a lot of places, and there's a lot of new faces, a lot of new guys that are trying to make their mark as a new head coach. And there's also guys that are longer tenured head coaches that are looking to, hey, we got to elevate. We want to try to, play for a championship. And you start looking around, and it's hard for me to find a spot where I think one of those faces would be willing to roll the dice on a Deuce Knight with very little idea of, projection outside of what they saw against Mercer and what little bit you saw against Ball State. And then it's all high school film from there. And if you have any practice film, I don't know how you would get that unless we packaged it up for Deuce to go use. So is there a spot out there that would be willing to roll the dice on him to come in immediately as a starter? Or is he going to be looking at a similar scenario wherever he goes? To me, what happens at Ole Miss may be the biggest indicator. Ole Miss seems to be like one of the bigger threats. LSU, look, Lane Kiffin is not going to roll with Deuce Knight as his guy, $15 million to go try to make an impact at LSU. Wouldn't shock me if he's like in the sweepstakes for, Sam Leavitt or whoever, insert the top quarterback in the portal. Wouldn't shock me if that guy goes to LSU. Ole Miss, you got Austin Simmons there. You got Trinidad Chambliss, who's trying to get a waiver, which it's not looking good. So they have quarterbacks there. Looks like Austin Simmons, if Chambliss doesn't get his waiver, Austin Simmons is going to be the guy there. So do you take the chance of going there and trying to beat Austin Simmons out? He had a lot of praise early in the year, got injured, and then Chambliss took over, and they never looked back. To me, that would be the big scenario there. Does Austin Simmons want to go elsewhere and find a starting job? There's probably some places that would take him as a starter because of his film that he's had. He obviously had some success last year when he went in a few times for Jackson Dart whenever Jackson got hurt. Started off the year a little rocky, but nothing crazy bad. And then obviously, you had the whole injury situation. So Ole Miss to me seems like the biggest hurdle to watch. Deuce doesn't seem like a guy that wants to move to go sit for a year when he could just stay here and sit for a year with his friends that he's built with, obviously loves Auburn and things of that nature. So I think you're in a really good spot there, even if you don't necessarily roll with him as the guy. I think you're in a good spot to maybe keep him. We're going to talk about the transfer deal here as well, because obviously there's going to be a couple of names that are going to dominate the conversation. But before we do that, let's give a quick shout out to Inspiration AI. Look, AI should work for you, not the other way around. And that is the calling card for Inspiration AI. I mean, this thing goes as far as having bilingual voice and chat agents. So it doesn't have to be just stuck to one language as far as reaching out to potential prospects or potential employees. AI-powered HR screenings and hiring hubs. Like, how much time do you waste going through resumes? How much time do you waste, calling resumes and setting up interviews and things like that? Automate that. There's no reason for you to do it unless you just want to do it. There are things out there that can help you take care of those and free you up to do the things that actually make you money. So give them a shout. Inspiration AI. Go to inspiration-ai.com and get a free estimate. If they don't have the out of the box solution for you, they can create something custom. Show them some love. Auburn guy as well. It's Inspiration AI. We'll be back right after this. Auburn's going to be a big player if they decide they want to go into the portal to go find that starter, that fix, that let's win right now guy. They're going to be in a really good spot. And the graphic was released, and we kind of talked about it on the last show, but you had Jackson Arnold earning close to $2 million. Between that 1.5 and that $2 million range. So that's obviously going to be freed up. You're not going to have much more probably to add to that to be a very, very competitive player to go get, one of the top quarterbacks. Obviously, Sam Leavitt is going to be a name that's out there. He is going to be a big money guy. I think that same graphic had him earning like $3 million at Arizona State. I don't know that that's necessarily realistic. And a lot of times when those guys announce, they probably already have in mind where they're going. And it's been rumored for a while that he's entering the portal. So that one will be definitely one to watch. I don't know that Auburn's going to be a big player there, but that just goes to show you like what type of players are going to be available. The focus is going to be, and the talk is going to be around Byrum Brown. I mean, let's just call it what it is. The talk with Auburn and portal quarterbacks is going to probably start and end around Byrum Brown. Okay, the quarterback from South Florida. It just came out, I think, yesterday that he is sitting out of their bowl game, and he's going to be a quote unquote on the field coach. He's going to help coach, but he doesn't want to be a distraction because everybody knows he's going into the portal. Threw for over 3,000, rushed for over 1,000. Very, very explosive and electric quarterback at that level. Now, how does it translate to SEC competition, to Big Ten competition, to Big 12 competition? That's going to be what all these coaches are going to be. ACC competition. That's what all these coaches are going to be looking at when they start analyzing how can Byrum Brown fit in what we do. I know that UNC is very, very high on Byrum Brown early. And obviously, you have the connection. We turn to the connection with Alex Golesh. Byrum signed with South Florida before Golesh got there, or maybe he signed with him. No, he was there because he played a season before Golesh got there. His very first full season as a starting quarterback with Golesh, he threw for over 3,000 yards. He got hurt in his second year. His third year, he balled out again. So naturally, you're going to think if Auburn can be competitive with money, which we've already seen, that money's now freed up with Jackson leaving. With the money being right, could Byrum slide in here and then it translate flawlessly? And then you have a sort of a ready-made product. You don't have to go through the whole learning aspect and breaking down film and figuring out the playbook. You already know it. That's going to be the big conversation that's going to happen between now and January 2nd is Byrum Brown's going to be at the top of all the conversation as far as Auburn goes. And we'll have so many conversations about how he actually translates and what things could look like with him. To me, the more important thing is how does it work with this quarterback room? Jackson's gone. You're bringing in Reese Brush. He's going to be, a true freshman. He's probably not going to factor into the game very much. To me, the question is going to be if you do, in fact, go get a Byrum Brown or someone of that nature to be your one-year guy, because that's what Byrum will be. He'll be a one-year guy, a one-year fix. If you find somebody like that, how does Deuce handle that? We talked about earlier, it seems like there's not a lot of options where there won't be a scenario like this for Deuce if he were to decide to leave, unless he takes a step down in competition. Now, there's some G5 schools out there where Deuce could go immediately and dominate immediately. Heck, he could go to South Florida and dominate immediately and then maybe jump back up because he'll have a chance to put film. He'll have a chance to get some film out there. But the question is, how does he handle maybe not being the guy? How does he handle? I know he's really close with a guy like Cam Coleman. If Cam Coleman stays and Deuce isn't the guy, is there really ever going to be that chance for those two to play together for any period of time? Doesn't look like it. Is that discouraging? That to me is going to be the first test of Alex Golesh. I know he loves from what I understand, he thinks Deuce is a very, very good player. Has all the tools that he looks for in a quarterback. But you just aren't 1,000% sure yet if you can take those and go win year one. So how do you convince him just be patient for one more year? It's not very uncommon for quarterbacks to sit 2 years. I'm going to find a 1-year solution. We're going to groom you and then move forward. Okay, now that obviously would be a dream scenario for most Auburn fans. I don't think there's many that would object to that. But there is the flip side of that. There is the flip side of that to, hey, look, I just don't want to be a part of this anymore. And if I got to sit, I'll just go sit somewhere else. That's definitely on the table. And I haven't mentioned Ashton very much. And I know that, he's obviously still a quarterback on the roster, but something about that whole situation feels like he may not be here next year either. He's put enough film out there to me to make him an attractive candidate to go start somewhere and not just be a backup at Auburn. So that wouldn't surprise me if he's not here either. So if Deuce decides he's not going to be here, Jackson's not here, Ashton's more than likely not going to be here, you could be looking at a whole new quarterback room for the second year in a row, okay? And then you're obviously going to have to figure out how to piece together. You're going to have to go find a Deuce replacement that's willing to come in, has a lot of upside, but's willing to sit for 1 year. There may be more guys out there than you think. There may be more talented guys out there like that than you think. Maybe not with all of the upside that Deuce has, but there may be guys out there that you can go find that will come in and sit behind the starter for one season and then be ready to learn and then take over the following season. There'll be tons and tons of options, but there is a very good chance Auburn could have a completely brand new quarterback room this year, or this coming up year. So let me know what you think. What should be Auburn's strategy here? Should you say, by no means necessary should you ever lose Deuce? So that means if you got to pay him $2 million or you got to promise him the starting job, whatever, you can't lose Deuce. I'm sure there's some folks in that camp, and I don't know that I have obviously an opinion to the opposite, but I'm not strong enough in that opinion to say that I don't necessarily disagree with the importance of keeping him. And I don't know that I would necessarily see the downside to the point where I'm like, it's going to be a failure if you roll with Deuce. Let me know what you think about that. Let me know what you think about the transfer portal. Let me know what you think about Byrum Brown. Or is there another quarterback out there you want to see Auburn maybe take a stab at that's kind of projected to maybe go into the portal? Guys, I really appreciate it. We're going to be talking all week. Don't forget, if you need a good real estate agent in the Auburn, Opelika, Lee County area, hit me up. Kyle Rush at kw.com. Buy, build, sell, invest. I'm your guy. So reach out. I'd love to help. And we'll be back again soon. It's another episode of the Top Button Podcast. Stay buttoned.
Thanks for listening, and drive home safely.